Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello there, my friends. I hope this finds you well today, and I hope what I am going to offer you today will make your day and the rest of your life even better. I know that it definitely has done that for me. So last week we explored things about connecting his way, your husband's way, your man's way. And today we're going to do the counterpoint to that. We are going to explore connecting your way, and specifically with one tool that I want to offer you, I want to teach you so that you can use it and you can benefit from it in your life and marriage. Because it is a good one that I attribute some part of my husband and I's wonderful, connected, loving marriage to. It's something that we've implemented really regularly in most of our years together, and I want to offer it to you today. But first, let's talk for a moment about connecting your way, or what I'm calling that. Now, obviously, once again, I'm generalizing. But in general, from most of the sensitive women that I know, talk to, and work with, we love to connect through talking and some other ways, right? But one of the things we love is deep talks, right? Exploring, sharing our feelings, hearing about our partner's feelings, sharing openly, right? And kind of learning the depths of each other's souls. Yeah? I hear from so many women that that's what they want more of with their hubby, or one piece of what they'd like to experience more of is more deep connecting talks. And of course, feeling seen and heard and empathized with, and to be able to do the same for their partner. I think this is really, it's just so common and feels like so enriching for so many of us, and so connecting. So, but the thing is that not all men are comfortable with these kinds of deep talks and sharing their feelings, right? Not all men are eager for such things. Now, I do want to say some are. There are some men out there that are more interested in that. But it's less common than the men who aren't very interested in that. Now, many men might be willing to do such things, right? And may even get comfortable or come to even enjoy doing having these sorts of conversations as they do more of it. It just might be for many, many that it's not been something they've done much of before in their lives. They're not really socialized by society to want to have deep connecting talks. Or at least some people are. They don't come from a family where that's a thing. So some will be willing to have these types of conversations and will be able to grow into enjoying it. Some men won't ever be up for it. And some women too. So again, this isn't always just a male-female thing. Humans in general. But more men are socialized to not be open to or comfortable with deep connecting talks where we share our feelings and all of this, right? So again, some people will not ever be up for it. And I want to say, if that's your partner, last week's episode will help so much. So you don't have to feel deprived of connection in your marriage, right? Just as your partner can learn to enjoy certain things that you like and he's not so comfortable with, you can learn to enjoy and feel really connected through ways that he is naturally more are more naturally conducive to connection for him. Right? So please go back and listen to that episode, especially if your partner, as you listen to this episode, you're like, yeah, right, my man never gonna do this. Okay? Because it definitely doesn't mean you are doomed to not feel connected to him. Absolutely not. Actually, in the other episode that is very related to this is episode 68, sharing emotions to share emotions. So that one's a really important one. Then, along with last week's episode. All right. Without further ado, I want to share today what I'm going to be talking about, what I'm going to be giving you today, which is a process, again, that my hubby and I use regularly, and it certainly isn't like we made it up or anything. We've tweaked it a little bit. I've tweaked it a little bit, with experimenting and exploring what works best for us, and what I find works best for others. But it's really a beautiful pathway to the connecting deeply through communication, right? That you as a highly sensitive woman are most likely to really enjoy and love. So obviously, this is going to help you bring more connection and closeness into your marriage. But I also kind of like to think of it as keeping things unclogged between you, right? Like if you think about like when you clean out like all the food pieces from the bottom of the sink after doing dishes, right? You like dump that into the trash, or you put it into the like garbage incinerator thing, whatever that's called, the garbage disposal. It's similar to that. Like when you do that regularly, instead of just letting it go down the drain, you don't have to use Drano or get a plumber to unclog the whole drain later. Makes sense? It's like keeping the pipes clear, right? Keeping the air between you clear, so that you're not kind of ending up with big explosions between you and big upsets that are just a lot harder to deal with than when you're just regularly kind of cleaning them out along the way. Yeah? So one way to think about this is this process is as both preventative care, right? Keeping your marriage healthy, and a method to deepen and maintain closeness and intimacy over time. And this process I call the heart check-in. You, of course, can call it just check-in or anything you want, the weekly check-in, if heart check-in is a little too frou-frou for you. But I love calling it that because it reminds me of its point, connecting to our hearts and each other. It's hearts. So without too much talk about it, I just want to lay out how this works. Now, I do want to preface, this works best when you put it on your calendar every single week. And you don't just put it on your calendar, right? When that day comes around that you've scheduled it for, you actually do it. The beautiful thing about this is it only takes 10 to 15 minutes, depending on what you choose, a week. Now, I teach the details of it more in depth and help you remove any obstacles and barriers to it and finesse it with my, what I call sensitive connection process, which you learn when you come coach with me. But I will give you the generalized overview right now, enough so you can totally go try it out in your own life, implement it, and begin really benefiting from it. What's important to understand as you head into this heart check-in is that this is an opportunity for each of you to share with the other how things are going for you in your relationship. What's going on for you individually, just in general, and specifically with a compassionate, open heart. Right? This is absolutely not a time for like reacting to what your partner's saying, or having discussions about it, like in a deep, kind of resolving conflicts. That's not what this is about. It might be that we bring up and air things that are going on that might be hard or might need a conflict resolution session, right? But it's not the time to actually do that. It's also absolutely not a time for blaming anyone, but rather, like, if there is something hard, sharing how that, whatever it was that happened, whatever the issue is, how you're experiencing it. And in other words, we would call this like having ownership when you come to the session, owning your experience. And the other piece of it is, the other understanding to have as you go into this, is it's a time to, actually a couple more understandings, it's a time to be open and vulnerable, right? It's intended as a safe space, right, for each of you to share. And that means the listener is always going to be listening openly, right? Like, I love to think about it as if when the other person is sharing, the listener is receiving what they're saying, no matter what it is, with compassion, with presence, and even as if it's a gift, right? To be getting to hear the internal life and the experience of this being that you love, right? So that's kind of the intentions you want to go into your session with. Now, there is an art to this. There is a learning curve to this, and I work with my clients and I teach them how, to root themselves in certain states for best success, how to really be great at communication, including the listening part. And I give them, as part of our work together, they get a book called Sensitive Communication Skills and Conflict Solutions for Sensitive Couples, which helps them have access to everything that they need to be able to really use this and any other communication strategies really successfully to create the most connection and understanding and respect and love between them and their partner. So my clients get that when they come coach with me. But I think to just get started, like just coming from that intention and those understandings that I was just sharing will be really helpful for you. All right, I'm going to lay out the steps and then I'll give you just a little bit more depth on each of them. So the first step in this process is decide on timing. And step 2 is actually optional. It's connect physically in a way that is comfortable for both of you. Step 3 is the time for talking. And this is the biggest step. This is where I have some sub-steps, which I'll share in a few minutes. And step 4 is, as the listener, listen. And then step 5 is also optional. And it's if you do uncover some issue, right, that you do want to resolve or get some movement on, choose a time later to have a conflict resolution session. So I'm not even going to circle back to this step, but just know that's an optional last step to this heart check-in. Okay, so let's dive in a little more deeply into each of the steps. So the first step, again, is to decide on how long you want to do it for. Now, maybe this is a step you only need to do once, right? Where you just decide if you want it to be 10 or 15 minutes total. Right? You could start by the first time you could try 10 minutes. And if it feels a little too squeezed, you could extend it to 15 minutes. We want it to be short because if it's not short, there can be a tendency to then start to have a lot of discussion about it. At least that's what I found, right? It could devolve into a conflict or like trying to figure things out or plan solutions and all of this. That's not the point of this. So choose your time. Know that you can adjust it next time, but don't go longer than 15 minutes and try to be strict about that. The other piece on this step is, again, deciding on timing, is deciding if you want to kind of do a back and forth in the sharing, or if you want to do like the first 5 to 7 minutes, one of you is the speaker and sharer and one of you is the listener. And I recommend that option, the second one, when you're first starting out. Because again, if you're just going back and forth, it can be more tempting and easier to fall into kind of ending up having a discussion or an argument. And that's not the point, again. So if you take the second option where one of you is the speaker and one of you is the listener, it's more likely, it's more conducive to being able to receive and hear the other person really well, and to be able to just feel like you're really being witnessed and heard by the other person. Yeah. Again, this process is not about reacting to the other person. We're working on learning how to not do that. That's part of the benefits of this process and doing it every week. We get good at learning how to not react. What a beautiful skill to have. I want to advise that you actually set a timer. So like you'd set it for 7.5 minutes if you were doing a 15-minute session, or 5 if you were doing a 10-minute session. And then you each get that amount of time for your sharing. All right, step 2, this is the optional step of connecting physically in a way that's comfortable for both of you. There's not much more that needs to be said about this, although, you could hold hands, you could put your hands on each other's legs or arms, or just lean up against each other. I always think of gentle physical touch as a doorway to connection. So it's a great option if it doesn't feel like something you want to do, or one of you doesn't want to. It's totally fine. It's not going to make this fail. It's totally going to be fine without it. All right. Step 3. This is the meat of the heart check-in. The heart of the heart check-in. So we want to start with, I'm going to call this step A of step 3, not to be too complicated. We want to start with some appreciations, or sharing what's worked well between you, or something that the speaker appreciates about the listener. Yeah. We could just think about this as reflecting on and sharing anything positive that you can between you or about the listener, about your partner. Right? So this is not, I don't recommend that you make this part optional. Right? This is a great way to practice appreciations, which we've talked about in earlier podcasts. So beautiful for helping strengthen a marriage, even if it's uncomfortable. Practice it here. The step B here is again, I don't want you to skip this part either, unless nothing comes to mind, right? You can totally skip over this part if you really don't have anything that you can find. But what you share here is what was hard for you this week. And this can be either in your life that outside of your partnership, like that has nothing to do with your partner, or something that came up that was hard between you, right? And so one question, you could just say the question here to answer is, what didn't work well this past week for me or between us? Note on this, again, this is not a place to try to get him to change, with you sharing this. The point is to kind of air what's on your heart so your partner can have an understanding of where you're at and how things impact you. This is a way of really getting to know each other and hear about each other's internal world, which is a beautiful, from there, your partner has the option of, taking in that information and learning from it and maybe choosing to do things differently in the future. Yeah. All right. Next thing to share is what you're most excited about this next week. And this piece is optional, right? If you have more time, if you feel like it, this is a fun question to share about, like the coming week. What are you excited about? Then you could share what you're worried about over this coming week, if there's anything, or anything you're just not looking forward to, or something along those lines, right? And then the last optional piece here is share where you could use more support in the coming week. Yeah? Like, hey, this day is going to be really a lot. I'd love support in this area. And you just say it. You don't even have to make a request, right? It's just like, hey, this is where I'd love support, so that your partner can know, right? And then the last piece, not optional, is close with another appreciation. So it could be as simple as, hey, thank you for listening to me right now. Thank you for doing this heart check-in with me. Yeah. And then, of course, you'll switch roles. You'll go through really just step 3 again, but with reversed roles. All right. So step 4 is really just a note. As I said earlier, the listener's job is to listen, right? So again, this is, you don't want to be talking while you're the listener. You might add a little or yeah, or I hear you, or maybe a head nod, right? But this is not about interrupting. It's about being present with them and really listening with an open heart and open ears. So that's the basic structure. And aside from the parts that I said aren't optional, of course, all of it's optional, right? But if you're going to do it, I highly recommend doing the parts that I said are not optional, and really exploring the format as I've shared it. But I do want you to know that you can adapt this sort of template to work for you. You could change some of those optional questions that I shared. Like I always advise playing with it and making it your own. But do try on the structure as I've shared it before you adopt it. Adapt it, not adopt it. Adopt it and then adapt it. Yeah, that's it. And again, I highly recommend making this part of your regular week, scheduling it for the same night or day every week. Because it is the cumulative effect of it that's going to be so potent over time in your marriage. I want to just reiterate or explicate a little bit on one of the biggest reasons this is so powerful is because it allows us to be present without reaction or without acting out of any feelings that come up in us with our honey, right? And also to share vulnerably what's going on within us. This is like the essence of emotional intimacy, right? And we're not here to pressure the other person to say more or be different. We're here to witness and be open to this person that we love. And then to open up to and be seen by this person that we love. This is how we build intimacy. Now, I want to share just a few tips about communicating with your partner if he's not psyched about this idea, or if you think he's going to be resistant to it. You might be surprised, right? But if you do find, or you think he's going to be a little resistant, here's some options about talking to him. You can always present it in a way like, hey, honey, I really love connecting with you. And I'd love to keep feeling connected with you and really make our connection even deeper. Because I just love feeling connected with you. And I've heard of this way, this process that I'd love to try out with you. And then you could ask, would you be willing to explore trying it with me? It would mean a lot to me. So that's a beautiful, obviously use your own words, but that's the general sense. A beautiful way that tends to really work for people to get your partner on board for things. And, you could even say, hey, this may be awkward at first for me and for you too. I totally am aware of that, right? But for me, I feel like a little awkwardness is not too big a price to pay for feeling even more closeness with you. Yeah? That's oftentimes a beautiful way to inspire someone to want to do something and try something with you. If you do run into a lot of resistance from him, if he's just like, no way, here's one thing you can try out. You can ask your own self, ask your own brain, your very resourceful, creative brain, how can I encourage this thing that I want? And just see your brain, if you let your brain mull on that question, you might come up with some great answers to inviting him towards that. So learn to rely on that own brain that brain of yours to come up with good solutions. All right. And what other hints I'd give you here is you can go listen to the last podcast about connecting his way, and the podcast again that I mentioned earlier, episode 68, about sharing motions to share emotions. Both of these address what I've just shared now. This more, like communicating about it, and they also offer lovely avenues for connection, even if it doesn't end up being this particular way. All right, so I want to make sure I don't say goodbye today before offering this. Regular, frequent, kind of light connection, actually like this, right, may go further, may pack a bigger punch than just sparse moments of deep connection. So, I do invite you to pay attention to this just in general in your life, like looking for these little moments of connection. I have a whole episode called Micro Moments of Love, or Micro Moments. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Micro Moments of Connection, right? Look for those in your daily life together and build this connecting but brief communication process, this heart check-in, into your week, if you can, if your partner is up for it with you. So I hope that you find this really helpful when it comes to communication and connection in your marriage. It's been wonderful in mine. And again, I do go way more into depth and how to connect in ways that are really nourishing to you and him, and how to communicate really well and sensitively and effectively when you coach with me. Again, I have a whole process for helping grow and deepen what I call sensitive connection and sensitive communication. And of course, you learn it in depth when you coach with me. I am booking clients to start out in the spring now. So do reach out now if you'd like to explore being one of them. Or you can start improving your communication and connection now by trying this process out and grabbing my 7 Phrases to Deepen Connection booklet if you haven't got it yet. It comes along with what I'm calling kind of a mini e-course, right? An email course that comes along with it. And it's such a great starting point for building your communication skills, feeling more connection, respect, and, love between you, to set up a consult or to grab that 7 most powerful phrases to deepen connection. Head over to my website, www.lifeisworthloving.com. And, both of those options, grabbing either of those, it should be pretty obvious from there. All right, my friends, enjoy this and be oh so well.